Well, hello everyone. Welcome back to Life on Side B, a ministry of posture shift, where we explore the joys, beauties, challenges of living according to the traditional sexual ethic as LGBT and same-sex attracted Christians. Ashley and I are here, and we have our mascot with us, the baby. Hello. Hello. Oh, so adorable. And we are joined by our friend Lucas. Lucas, how are you doing?
Hello. Nice to have you all here. Nice to be with you.
This is going to be a fun conversation.
I hope so.
Yes,
Oh,
absolutely.
Definitely.
Yeah. I mean, so for everyone listening, you know, a little bit ago we did a Grant and Henry did a conversation with Steve in Kenya. And to give a little bit of context of what we're wanting to do, you're going to be seeing a series of conversations that we have sporadically throughout this season with Side B Christians around the globe, different parts of the globe, different continents, because we want to be able to explore a little bit of the unique aspects of what it looks like to be Side B in different cultural and cultural contexts in different countries. I do also want to give a disclaimer in these conversations that Steve in Kenya, Lucas is in Brazil, we'll have someone in Europe, we'll hopefully have some other conversations, but everyone can't speak for an entire context, an entire country. Everyone is speaking for themselves. Lucas speaks for himself. Steve spoke for himself. Obviously, we will talk about the general context within different countries and different areas, but ultimately, Ashley, myself, Lucas, we can only speak to our experience within a culture. So we want to give that disclaimer for anyone listening that might have a different experience in these situations that we're talking about. Well, Lucas, we are so glad to have you here. And this has been a conversation I have been really excited about because, you know, you live in Brazil. Ashley and I have both lived in Latin America, even though many think that we're Latinos, but we're not. And so just talking about, you know, what it's like to be Side B in Latin America, but more specifically in Brazil, can you just share with us a little bit, give everyone listening a little bit more information about yourself, you know, what's been your journey in sexuality like up to this point?
Okay, so nice to meet you all. My name is Lucas Pestana. I am 36 years old. I was born in the state of São Paulo, one of the major cities here in Brazil. I think you probably may have learned about it. And I was raised within this very traditional church group called Church of Christ, Igreja de Cristo. It's not very known in Brazil here, but it is very well known in the US,
yes,
to my knowledge. And
I at least know of it. That's all I know.
yeah. And okay, I don't quite belong to the Protestant, much less to the evangelical bubble, to the evangelical subculture. I was always raised within my own group, which thought of themselves as the right church.
Yeah.
Which nowadays I'm more open to learning more about other traditions, even though I still have my preferences of doctrine, etc. But essentially, I was raised without the whole thing of like gospel music, entertainment, major ministries, which includes ministries about sexuality and dating and so on. The resources I had were like Sunday school classes for youth.
Yeah.
However, I should also say that my parents, they are very well-known figures here in the Igreja de Cristo in Brazil. So, and also my dad and my mom too, they are theologians. They study the Bible and they teach the Bible for a living. So I learned a lot from them. I still do. And a lot of my convictions came not only from how do I feel, what do I want, but actually following their example by going after studying, learning.
Like, so how did you come to like side B, all of those kind of things? Like how did that all work for you?
It was very simple for me. I read in my science books that that was like the 90s, I guess. I read in my science books like, okay, it's just a phase most boys go through. So I was like, oh, okay, that's fine. I'll turn 18 and it will magically go away. And it didn't.
Surprise.
So I was like, okay, I have to deal with this somehow. I was pretty sure right off the bat that homosexual sex, having sex with another man, was, from my understanding, a sin, something I shouldn't do. But still, I had the feelings. I felt same-sex attraction. So how do I deal with that? So I tried to look up resources about how, like, accepting it, just like trying to change, trying to become ex-gay or something. It was never something I considered. Maybe because I wasn't bullied. I was never like someone who got bullied for behavior or clothes I like to wear or music I like to listen to. I was very like straight looking, I guess.
Yeah.
So it was just a matter of what do I do with this? And then I found over time, very slowly, some like 2004, I guess, more or less, some resources on some people telling their stories, usually some anonymous blog on the internet, that, okay, I am same-sex attracted, I am gay,
Yeah.
but I am not going to go and do it because I don't believe it's right. And I thought, oh, that's something I agree with. That's something I can see myself going in that direction. Then, over the years, I found more and more resources. I found GCN, the Gay Christian Network, which now has been rebranded as QCF, I guess. But yeah, then I had my first contact with Side B in the US, with this whole perspective had a name and a theology to back it up. So yeah, and I had like periods of like getting more in touch with it.
Yeah.
Staying more away from it, trying to focus on my studies.
Trying to stay away from the drama. No, I'm joking.
Yeah. My parents very often said to me, like, Lucas, you cannot focus on this. We want you to focus on your studies, on this and that. And so I stepped back at a number of times to do other stuff.
Yeah.
And I've been friends with some people, say, okay, Ron Belgal, I consider him a close friend of mine.
Oh, yeah.
I have the privilege of talking to him privately since the days of Google Talk. And yeah, and over the years, some friends, at first from the United States, North America, and other countries, mostly US, and then from other countries, even Brazil, I started to meet them and share stories and resources with them. Nowadays, I am in touch. I'm not publicly out. I don't talk much about my sexuality in public. I like to keep it private. Even though I'm doing this for the purpose of this podcast.
Which we're very thankful.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure, actually.
Yeah.
But what was I saying? I prefer to keep it more to myself, and I usually do my stuff behind the scenes, not showing my face very much, like here, but actually just talking to people, like sending them a private message and providing whatever support and sometimes resources I have or know of.
That's good.
Well, you kind of described about how you found a lot of your resources, which was very similar to when I lived in South America, was just kind of just having to find what I could on the internet and looking it up, because like you said, it wasn't something that's very talked about in churches much. Let's see. Who would you say are like the bigger voices right now in Brazil leading the LGBT conversation and faith type thing? And I know because you sent us some resources and they actually have more than a little more than I expected. You have side A voices that you mentioned that you don't interact with much, but you know of them, and a few different side B voices and people that just kind of try to at the very least lead the conversation. Like what does that look like right now?
Well, so I must say that I tried looking up resources in Spanish, but there were two major problems. First, I'm not as fluent in Spanish as I am in Portuguese or English, so that was a bit of a stumble block. And second, despite that, I do have some search skills, but I was unable to find a lot. So
Spanish, there's really nothing.
Yeah, there's very, very little.
There's guiding families, like Posture Shift translated guiding families.
Which is you.
Yes, which is me. Preston Sprinkle at the... I'm just going to help you with this because I do know a little bit about what's in Spanish. Preston Sprinkle from the Center of Faith, Sexuality, and Gender translated Grace and Truth, their whole thing.
Oh, they did?
I know. Yeah, they did. They translated their whole curriculum.
Cool. I didn't know that.
And then the videos that go with with the training, they put subtitles on them, which
right,
which hey, Latin America's used to that.
Yeah.
And then I mean, Christopher Yuan's books. I think even his new book is in
those tend to be in Spanish. He has those in like a few.
Is Gay Girl Good God in Spanish?
Yes,
I can't.
That's in 4 languages.
That's in 4 languages.
Who?
Jackie Hill Perry's book. So
okay.
There's not really much side A stuff in Spanish. I don't even know of anything, honestly. And then there's like a bunch of ex-gay, like ex-gay. Like,
yeah, because that's what they had for the longest time. I think when I started going through stuff, it was a guy from Colombia, his wife's from Brazil. He went to Exodus in Ecuador, and a lot of the resources he actually had were from Brazil. When I first started trying to learn, I read like a lot of the resources he had. The first time I was even introduced to Exodus was actually through David and Brenda Riker. Years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, well, and Lucas, that's what really stood out to me as we connected, was because we started connecting about resources, and I was amazed by how many are in Portuguese, knowing how much are in Spanish.
Exactly. So we had a few things happening here. Publicly, the major voice in the conversation, I would say we don't quite have an institution as strong as Exodus International was in the United States, which is good. Thank goodness we don't have that. But I mean, we didn't have that, I think. At least to my knowledge, me living in the Church of Christ, Igreja de Cristo bubble.
Yeah.
But the major voices here, they have usually been of very conservative pastors. You may have heard of this guy called Silas Malafaia. Not sure
No.
if that name rings a
No.
bell. It probably will to many,
Brazilians.
if any,
Oh, yeah.
listeners. Silas Malafaia, to many. Okay, I'm a little afraid to say that because some people here might be that, but those what do you call them? Those TV preachers, those prosperity gospel preachers,
Mm-hmm.
which are mostly about like making money.
Yeah.
And it seems those people found that many decades ago that offering to change someone's sexuality was a great way to make money. I'm not saying everyone's like that. I do believe there are some people who are sincere in their efforts to help. But many years ago, you would find like resources on how to live on homosexuality, how to fix your son's or your daughter's sexuality, and so on. So that has been it for a long time. Then, in recent years, things started changing. We do have some very important, some very mostly what we call side Y voices here in Brazil, which, for anyone who doesn't know, it is the posture that says, okay, you don't need to be ex-gay, but your identity needs to be in Christ. It needs to be as a son, as a daughter of God, not as any of those LGBTQ whatever letters. It is Christ only, period. So over the years, especially recent years, we've had books by many famous sci-Y authors, such as, I think Christopher Yuan, maybe. I'm pretty sure Rosaria Butterfield, and a couple of others. And some of the best that I like the most here are guys like Sam Alberry, which I really like, Ed Shaw, my personal favorite in Portuguese. What else? And others. There has been an effort from some Christian publishers, mostly the Reformed ones, to bring that literature to Portuguese. And in recent years also, we have seen the advancement of side 8 voices too, like the ones that are fully affirming.
Yes.
So we have had a number here. I would say probably one of the most well-known voices here is one called Evangélicxs, with an X replacing the final
Of course.
vowel.
Yes. I'm saying more about the branding. That sounds like a branding for that kind of group.
It does. Their full name is Evangélicxs pela diversidade, Evangélicxs for diversity, and there are plenty of others. But then in even more recent years, we slowly started to see very little, but high quality side B stuff in Portuguese, and I think that's something. I mean, we don't have many side Y resources in other Latin American countries. Only a few, like you mentioned, and through side B, that's very rare. So, and part of that is I had a participation in that, even though So okay, even though on the TV, in the newspaper, you might not hear very much about many things other than those big pastors, big leaders speaking. When you do a Google search, when you go to Twitter, to Instagram, to TikTok, I guess, where the youth are, then you can find way more resources from all perspectives, all across the board. But for side B, I would say some of the most important things we have here are two of them. One is called Vivendo em Comunhão, living in communion. The initials are like VEC, VEC. And that's a project started by some friends of mine. I participate as a translator. I help translate tweets, articles, and proofread texts. And we publish material on discussions on race, on sexuality, on friendship, spiritual friendship, and relationships and so on. Mostly from a conservative perspective, from an orthodox, theologically orthodox perspective. And that's very unique. We are doing very well. We have many people are connecting with us, and they are learning more about like trying to forcefully change your sexuality should not be your main goal, but just, I like to say it like doing the best with what you've got. And it's been great. For anyone interested, for anyone who can read Portuguese, understand Portuguese, it's at Vivem Comunhão, without the tilde, Vivem Comunhão, on Medium, Instagram, Twitter.
And we'll
Telegram,
put all of that in
the
show notes as well.
Okay. The other one is a podcast called Conflictu. Like conflict, but with a U, Conflictu, by a Brazilian researcher and a Christian guy called Thales Moura. Thales is spelled with a Thles, Moura. And again, it's in Portuguese, although he has sometimes partnered with people and done episodes in English.
I was very fascinated, like when he did his whole thing with Peter Volk, and how they had like an episode in English and an episode in Portuguese. It was the same like episode, but I was very intrigued by that. So, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, those are these two. And you can find him at in Portuguese again, and sometimes in English, at ConflictuCast on many platforms like Instagram, Twitter, Spotify, and others. However, there are other voices too, if you want me to mention them.
Yeah.
There are others, which have,
if you can just like quickly mention those, and then we'll go on with that.
So, there's this profile on Instagram called Gálatas 3:28, Galatians 3:28, which publishes a lot of content across the board to people in any of the sides or outside of them, to LGBTQ and same-sex attracted Christians. So it's at Gálatas 3:28, at Gálatas 3:28 on Instagram. It is quite good. There is this other one called Íris Projeto, like Iris Project. They do offer resources. They're very side-wide, and they are encouraging people to get closer to God, and not focus on the sexuality so much. Sometimes, which is something that bothers me, sometimes they will they will just focus too much energy on the identity language problem. Yeah. But overall, it's a good resource. It's good. And two other ones, there is Courage, Brazil, Courage Brazil, the Ministry for Roman Catholic Christians. I'm not Catholic, of course, so I don't know much about it, but I know it exists, and that's pretty much all I know about them, to be honest. So they are there. There are also resources, to my knowledge, for, say, Latter-day Saints, Mormons, and to other believers, too.
Yeah.
And finally, there is... where is it? Yeah. There is Exodus, Brazil, which, like, when I first heard of it, I thought, oh my goodness, Exodus, oh no. Because of what I knew of Exodus International from my North American friends. So it is connected to something larger, the Exodus Global Alliance, which is a very side X, sometimes Y organization.
They kind of like toggle in between those two things.
Exactly. But, and here in Brazil, we have voices like all across the board. We have the more old-fashioned ones, pro ex-gay therapy, but we do have some. One of the best voices is this woman called Andréa Vargas, and she's more like I want to embrace the LGBTQ, the same-sex attracted people, and let God do like the work if needed. But I'm here to talk to you and listen to you. So unlike some other people, I really appreciate her job because she actually listens to LGBTQ people and to the larger LGBTQ community. So she's very popular. She has paid online courses, and she gives interviews on the internet every now and then, and so on. So
well, and oh, go ahead.
No, that's pretty much it. And there have been, like I said, most books that we have here, they have been translated
from English. Yes.
But we have had a very small number, but a few books published in Portuguese by Brazilian authors. So
and we can.
That's something great.
Yeah, and for everyone listening, we're gonna put all of these resources pretty much. Lucas is great on the resources. We will be putting all of it in the show notes. And I think that's been one of the things that struck me, even as we've looked at like doing this on what side B looks like in different contexts, cultural contexts. And I think for me, Brazil, more than any other place, has surprised me by the amount of just conversation that's happening from all sides. And then on top of that even side B itself, because like I said, in the Spanish-speaking part of Latin America, it's really it's very, very small. Even Europe, it's not as big, and we're going to talk about that in another episode. It's not as big as many people think that it's happening. In other places, but Brazil has been a thing. So I would first love to hear, like, then, you've kind of talked about a little bit as you've talked about, like, these are all the different voices. But what does the sexuality conversation look like in Brazil? Both as a whole and as a church, but more specifically, I'd love to hear from you. Where do you think it looks differently than how it's looking in North America? Again, from your perspective. I know this is all from your perspective.
Yeah. Okay. So take my voice here, my opinion, with a grain of salt here, because I'm someone who is not part of the evangelical culture, but I do think we have had some like those ex-gay and ex-gay scandals. There was one very known in the 90s, But anyway, I think the thing here, I'm pretty sure plenty of people have been hurt by conversion therapies. Maybe, I do believe some of them were successful, but most of them were just hurt. But I think that has not been too big an issue like it has always been in, say, North America, in Canada, in the US. Here, like, the Brazilian government only recently recognized same-sex marriage, not just civil union, as a thing, with legal support. So, in other words, in many regards, we are like taking baby steps. In the US, you have had a long history of dealing with all of that. In here, I feel there's not much talk about it. There hasn't been. Or maybe people would say many voices have been silenced. Maybe. That's also a possibility.
Yeah.
But with that being said, I don't see that much of an issue with the whole ex-gay conversion therapies here. I think
like that part of the conversation is not as strong.
Exactly. I do think they exist, and I think a lot of parents, when they worry, oh, my son could be gay, my daughter could be lesbian, they do send him to camps that promise to cure them.
Mm-hmm.
That's the whole thing. But for the most part, especially now because we have social media, these young people, they can just connect on the internet with other people.
Yeah.
They can just go to Facebook, Twitter, to Instagram, to TikTok, and find other people who try to convince them of something.
Mm-hmm.
So the great debate, I would say the great debates, they are happening in two fronts right now in the present here in Brazil. One of them is the identity question. How should I identify?
Yeah.
I personally, maybe because I'm in the closet, I don't talk about it very much. I'm like, what I do is more important than what I say. That's my perspective and how I take it. So I don't really say publicly, I'm gay, I'm same-sex attracted, I'm whatever. I just say I am myself. That's the label I accept.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the identity thing, whether you can identify as LGBTQ, IA plus, etc., or whether you can only have your identity in Christ, which is the term used in the US, or your identity as a child of God. So that has been a big part of many heated, Twitter discussions. At these times, I'm very thankful. I'm not. At these times, I'm very thankful. I'm not very active on Twitter.
Me too. If it weren't for having the podcast have an account on there, I wouldn't be on there at all. But I mean, I am a person who does love drama. I love to watch it. Don't love to be in it. That's great in Twitter, but it gets too much for me.
That's me too.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's
to me.
Go ahead.
To me, Twitter is essentially a place to share and check the news. That's what I do.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting, like how I think a few different things. First of all, people a lot of times in North America think that because Exodus International fell in the United States, that Exodus is not still existing in other parts of the world. In Latin America, it's still very, very much real. It's taken a different route than necessarily Exodus International in the States, as you said. And I think that's true throughout all Latin America. That like Exodus in Colombia kind of is similar, like has begun to take a not completely ex-gay approach, kind of like sidewise.
Exactly.
they'll still sometimes say things where you're like, that's very ex-gay. It's very much trying to change attraction. But yeah.
Exactly.
Go ahead.
That's the case with, say, I would attribute that in Brazil here in particular to this. I'm sure there are many players, but especially to this one person, to this Andréa Vargas, who's the current president of Aceitos Brazil. There have been others, but she's the president. In her approach, she has her convictions. She is herself a heterosexual cisgender woman, so she knows her place. She knows where she's speaking from. But at the same time, the one thing that I admire the most about her is, I think it makes her stand out among others, and it makes Aceitos Brazil have a somewhat healthier approach than, say, Aceitos International in the US. I think, she's more about, I want to listen to you. I want to listen to your story.
Yeah.
Rather than outright offering you a book and saying, this is what you should do.
Yeah.
I'm a pastor, which is not. I am above in a hierarchy than you, so you should just listen to me and do what I say.
Yeah.
Which is like the feeling we often get from many books. Why should I listen to this pastor? Why should I buy this? Well, because he's a pastor, because he's a priest.
Yeah.
Because he is, she's more of an important Christian than you, essentially. So. Yeah.
Another question I'd love to ask you, and I don't think this is on our list, so I apologize. I would love to hear for you what it's been like for you as a side B Christian to find community. And not like that can be like just in general, because I know that like in again in my experience of Colombia, I have found that like the nuclear family stays very tight knit. Even like there's not, at least in Colombian culture, I have found there's not the same pressure as there is in the United States to like move out when you turn 18. Like families live together longer normally, unless you end up getting married and you move out. Like, you might live with your parents till you're 30, till you're 40, whatever. And, like, I sense, I would think, it seems like, yeah, that's similar in Brazil. Do you feel like that in your context, in other, like, celibate gay Christians' context, do you feel like that has been a help in developing community, a hurdle, like the strong nuclear family? What has that been like for you?
So, yeah, that's a very good question. I'm going to say here that I really like my family. I get a lot of support from them. We're still in a journey of like understanding each other. And especially they are like, okay, Lucas, we'll support you in celibacy, but we are worried that you might just lose focus. So...
go off the bandwagon. No, I'm just...
Yeah. So it's something to be careful with.
Yeah.
And even... In my case, especially, I'm not just a Christian in a church. I am the son of two very important figures in a micro universe, but still it's a whole universe of the Igreja de Cristo, of the Church of Christ here in Brazil. That's the main reason why I haven't publicly come out as anything at all. Why I usually keep silent on my public media about it. Because I fear that could have a negative impact on them and how that could be used against them by people who dislike them, people who want to cause them harm. With that being said, I do think, especially some years ago, Brazilian culture is more Latino. It's more like about families that are very tightly knit together. Very strong bonds. Sometimes, yes. Sometimes youth will move out to another city or to the university, to the college, or because they got married and they are moving out anyway. But very often, people will, like I did. I did my undergrad and my master's living under my parents' roof, which is something very normal to me.
Yeah.
Many people will get married, but they will still live in the same city as their parents, and often their parents-in-law too. So families here are very often like connected.
Yeah, very tight knit.
I feel like in the US, for instance, there's this whole thing about when your teenage years are over, when you are like 17 or 18 or something, you essentially you're going away to college, and from there to your very own independent life.
Yeah.
That's at least that's what I get from Hollywood films.
It's very true. I mean, like, for everything, which is, I'm not saying that in the Side B realm we're lying or something, that, like, for everything we talk about in Side B about the, like, idolization of marriage and the nuclear family, which is absolutely true, I would say compared to most other places in the world, the United States definitely has an idea of, like, the nuclear family is important, but once you go in 18, you're kind of your own family. You need to develop your own thing. You might stay connected. I know my family in the United States is a rare bird in that, like, my aunts and uncles all still live in the same town. My sister lives next door to my parents. Like, we see each other on a regular basis, have dinner regular basis. Like, I know my cousins very easily. Like, that is possible in the United States, but I would feel like that's more of the exception than the rule. Whereas in Latin America, like the family I lived with in Colombia, like, you had a family with 3 adult children, all with, like, master's degrees, none married, and so they all live with their parents, and there's nothing viewed wrong about that. Whereas in U.S. culture, if that happened, it would be like, what's going on?
Exactly. So, I mean, okay, so I gotta say something else here. So far, even though we've had a few bumps along the road, my experience with my family has been very good. But then again, my parents, they are very open-minded. So is my sister. I do have one sister. Even though they are very conservative too. But they are willing to listen. They also have, like, higher education. So both the university, we are not rich in terms of money, but we have always had, like, a very good life. We have never went through like days of hunger or something, days of without being able to pay rent. That's not been part of our experience, thanks God. So, and when I talked to them about my sexuality, there was a lot of difficulty, a lot of drama, many years of, like, are we on the same page? It's been complicated, but still, there was lots of support and minimal rejection. That's not the story for many people. That's not the story of many people who hide their sexuality from their families because they feel they won't be understood, and very often they are not when they do come out. Some of them, I would say, okay, some of them do get sent to those ex-gay camps, but many of them also, they are just kicked out of home, which is, I think it can be even worse. I don't know. So,
because you're on your own then. That's one of the hard parts about getting kicked out, is it's not like you then have to figure things out, and depending on your age, like, that's very traumatic,
So that has been complicated, and finding community, like, many people have found community, especially in those online spaces. in the era, in the pre-Facebook era, in Brazil we had while you guys had MySpace, we had Orkut.
Okay.
Here. So we've and MSN Messenger.
Yes.
Yep. So people started building those online connections, like meeting other people. So many people here, they have found I would dare say, a second or third family, besides their own nuclear blood family, which may or may not welcome them, embrace them, and their church, where their family of the faith, where the situation is even worse. People are just, especially many very conservative churches.
Yeah. I would say
people don't understand you.
I would say that was my experience in Colombia. Again, and I'm coming as a U.S. person that lived in Colombia, not as a Colombian, but like in the family unit, you would find, even in conservative families, I'd found a higher propensity for understanding, for willing to listen. Not always, but more than what people in people in the United States would think. Even in conservative families, you would find a higher propensity for that. In churches, it's harder. Absolutely. I do have a question, again, unless you had... And
sure.
By the way, everyone might be wondering, where is Ashley? The baby called, and so she had to get out in order for to take care of the baby. So she's very sad, and we miss her, but she will be on another episode later on.
Yeah.
I guess two more questions I would like to ask. And again, these are, y'all, please. I try to send questions ahead of time to guests. And then sometimes like this, I just go rogue. And then I ask random questions that have come up.
No problem.
Two questions. We'll start with one. What are some things that you wish, like having the side B conversation in the States, what do you wish, and many times that just becomes the dominating voice in this conversation internationally. Maybe a little bit Australia, now that we have like a few Australian voices that are pretty, like David Bennett and that. What do you wish people in the West, Western North American, Australian conversation would know from your experience of being side B in Latin America and Brazil? What are some things you wish they would know?
So, the first thing is I want to wish to all of our, especially side B and allies, brothers, sisters, siblings, and so on, in North America, especially in the United States and other English-speaking countries, is I am thankful. I'm grateful to your existence and for you starting these conversations many years ago and essentially clearing the path for others. So I really feel like grateful for talking to other people and listening to their experiences, so we kind of know where we are and what to do next in here. And how can we try to avoid some of the pitfalls you have fallen into.
Yep.
And do our own thing. We are trying. Not sure if we are succeeding, but we are trying.
Looking at North America and go, that's the way they went. Okay, let's not go there. Let's go over here. No, I'm joking.
Well, not quite.
I'm exaggerating. Continue.
Well, I mean, if I may make a little detour here, the second thing, the main thing here, the main conversation is about identity. But the second most important core thing in the conversations here has been about how, Side B was originally about affirming same-sex marriage. But that was it. But it was still monogamous, It was still
Side A.
Committed. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And these days, it has evolved. I think it was Justin Lee himself who used to say that it is now side AAA or something, where it's more like polyamorous relationships, non-monogamy, and giving even more emphasis to identity based on sexuality and gender, rather than just talking about sex. So that has been a big part of the that's not a good word, I'm sorry, but about the agenda, about the conversations here in Brazil from the more progressive people. They want the church to not only talk about two people of the same sex in bed, but much more than that, much larger. And that's something that maybe because I'm a little old-fashioned, but I'm not very comfortable with, to be honest. Yeah. The other thing is, I should mention this. I was, if not the main person, one of the main persons responsible for bringing the sides framework to Brazil, ABYX. And like, I have a very small reach online, but I was in touch with other people who had a much broader reach. And they spread it on WhatsApp groups, on Twitter discussions, and so on. So nowadays, at least among the youth and a few pastors that are active online, it's a language they know of.
Yeah. Yeah, because you made a whole document in Portuguese.
Yes, exactly. Which is I write under a pseudonym, but it's my compilation. I did it under the pseudonym Live in Vinyl. It's online. So if anyone says in Brazil, eu sou lado A, eu sou lado B, I am side A, B, etc., people know what they're talking about, especially online. But not only that, when I first shared it, I shared a picture in English from a website. I think it was Strength of His Mind.
Oh, yeah. From Gabriel Blanchard's podcast.
Exactly.
Or blog.
And then there was something unique there. It did not only include the four main positions, A, B, Y, X, but also some middle ones. C1 between A and B, C2 between B and Y, C3 between Y and X. If you're confused about this, you're listening to this and you're confused, just
I will put a link to it from
exactly.
Gabriel's blog.
But like, something about Brazilian culture is we have our jeitinho, the Brazilian way of trying to adapt and do things. So something that has happened, because I shared that image and it has been reshared over and over again. People here, they do not see so much each of those positions as an individual thing, but there's more of a continuum. And people are more comfortable saying, I'm in a, especially C1 position. I'm between this, whether I should have or not have sex with a same-sex person.
So there's much more fluidity in that.
It is much more fluid. And again, some people are rejecting it altogether, either on the identity basis, like this conversation is too identity-based, let's just talk about God. And some other people are rejecting it also because, say, side A, that's like, it's like talking about, okay, that's a very bad comparison, but it's like talking about, say, animals or plants. That's too generic a term. There are many people in that category. There are many different views and many different ways of including and affirming. And some demand more inclusion and affirmation than I initially thought was possible.
Mm-hmm.
So what I mean to say by all this is, first, to all people in the US listening, thank you. Second, the conversations here are advancing, and I would say they are moving slowly but steadily away from the sites framework,
Mm-hmm.
evolving it into something, I hope, better.
I hope so too. We can use a different framework.
We can. It's useful language, but it's not perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So, and even here, people here have been saying this a lot. We are our own country. Why should we just copy and paste this U.S. language? Maybe we can build our own thing. And from initiatives such as Vivendo em Comunhão, I kind of see that happening. I kind of see that, okay, we are side B, we are this and that, but that's not the main focus of our conversation, of what we have to say.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, that makes sense. And I think that that's something good. Like, I think it's so important in these discussions. Bridget Eileen even did a Twitter thing a little bit a while ago, asking in Latin America people's feelings about even LGBTQ labels, not like from a theological standpoint, but from a cultural standpoint. Like, did you feel like it was like imposed on the community in Latin America, or do you feel comfortable using them or not? And like, it was interesting to find, like, you have a lot of people that in Latin America you find using LGBT like labels to identify themselves. You have other people that just feel it's very Western, like it's just an imposed system. And so I think that in all of these different things, it's like, it's that way of, obviously there's good things happening in the North American conversation that can be used and can be brought over, but then allowing within the context of every country and every culture to see how it naturally evolves, because it will naturally evolve on its own, separate from the conversation happening there. Just when you have two cultures as similar as Australia and the United States, even how those two have evolved in different ways, and being able to know that, and I think the one thing that and this is something for anyone in North America that's listening that I would like to also say is we are so used to everyone around the world paying attention to the conversation in our context, and we never take the time to pay attention to the conversation happening in other contexts. And I know sometimes there's a language barrier. Obviously, like, I try to stay up whenever I see tweets on LGBT and faith issues in Portuguese, and it's a practice of my Portuguese, which I need. I want to do better at it. I've listened to like 2 episodes of Conflictu, and working on it there. But I'm at a point where I can understand a lot. I'll speak Spanish, and hopefully someone will understand what I'm trying to say. Anyway.
Tu español es muy bueno.
Gracias. But yeah, I would just say my encouragement here would be to everyone is take an opportunity, like even Australia, just even like us in Australia and Europe and a lot of these places, and even in Latin America, and in like even stuff like with Steve Wendia that we were talking about in Africa, like in Kenya, he does a lot of writings in English. I think it's really important that we see what's happening internationally in these conversations and learning about what's happening there, because we can get very U.S. center focused and simply to what's happening in our own context. So I would love that. Go ahead.
Yeah, something I would like to add here is, oh my goodness. Okay. Something I'd like to add here about all of this is, essentially, when you asked about community and how do you find other people, people have been finding each other online, and sometimes, and very often, like I've met great people. I've met you.
Yeah.
I've met Ron Delgado. I've met many others. But we live continents apart. And we think, oh, how about people who live in your country? Well, it doesn't help if one person lives in California and the other lives in New York.
It's different.
It's still very far.
Yeah.
Or in here, even if we find people who live, say, I currently live in Recife, in the northeastern region, and I can talk to people who live in Brasilia, in Porto Alegre, in the south, in Rio. I can even talk to people who live in a neighboring state such as João Pessoa, state of Paraíba, which is very close, but still, we don't go out very much. So, and even if you find someone who lives in your city, you might as well live in different neighborhoods, in different areas. And even if you do, clicking and forming a connection, that's something else entirely, you know. So, but then, people have formed these online communities. They have slowly been flourishing and becoming greater. I would say for the longest time, I didn't know about Andréa Vargas, about Exodus, about many ministries here in Brazil, mostly side-wide, but I didn't know about them. All I knew was I'm trying to find my own path. I'm trying to help people. And for the longest time, I saw things like the Gay Christian Network website. I saw a large Side B group on Facebook and other things. And I was like, oh, I wish we had something like that. And I'll just cross my arms and wait until it happens. And when it does, I'll join in. And then over the years, that has been a very slow realization. It dawned on me, like, maybe it won't happen unless I do it. So, I did it. Okay, I'm not a very well-known or even well-heard voice online. There are many people who speak louder than me. But I would say that I'm one of the key people that have been responsible for, like, bringing some of the language and creating some conversations that have now evolved into the Conflictu podcast, the Vivendo Comunhão project, and many pastors here in Brazil talking about this. So my message, okay, that sounds very like I'm bragging or something, but I'm not really.
No,
but like, my message here to anyone listening, because here in Brazil we also have a tendency, like, we are the biggest country, like in South America, Latin America. We have more economic influence than others, which may not be so much true nowadays, sadly. But our Portuguese is more spoken than other Portugueses. So we tend, like US, we Brazil tend to impose our culture on others. You should listen to us. But maybe my message, I don't want to sound proud, but my message to people in other countries, do look for resources in other languages and in your language too. But most importantly, maybe, just maybe, think and pray about the possibility that God may want you to do something about it, rather than, like me, cross your arms and wait for it to happen. It may happen, sure, but it may be one of us, a regular person, who may be invited by God to, take action. I was just, when I first started many things that I did, I was just connecting to people who wrote some reviews on Amazon, who posted a tweet here and there, and stuff like, or who made a comment on a YouTube video. These were some of the first people I found here in Brazil. Some, not another one came from the Facebook group. But the community thing started when one of them needed help. When one of them said to himself, I don't want to live anymore. I cannot live with this. And I was like, okay, I alone, I cannot help him very much, but maybe if he connects to other people besides me, more help will come.
Mm-hmm.
And essentially, that's how it all started.
Wow.
That's how the whole community-ish thing in Brazil here started.
That's so good.
Helping each other.
Yeah. Well, and I love that. And I think that that's like a great place to like finish this off on is like, you know, ultimately someone has to start these conversations in their context and we can't wait. Like, I remember when we talked to Wesley Hill and asking him why he wrote Washed and Waiting. His main thing was, well, I wanted to read the book, so I just decided to write it. Like, and I think that that's such a great encouragement. Like, if you're listening to this and you are anywhere in Latin America and you're like, I really don't see a conversation, like, look at Lucas. Like, you don't have to be this prominent voice. You don't have to be this thing. You can find ways to do it and to help the conversation move. And no one person can do it by themselves, but with each person taking steps, we can begin to allow these conversations to happen in our communities, in our neighborhoods, and that's courage. So, like, I want to thank you for everything you've done and everything that's happening in the Brazilian Side B community. This has been awesome to watch, and I can't wait to see in 5 years, 10 years, what this looks like even more.
Me too.
Yeah.
It will be. It's good to watch it and to be in some degree to be part of this story.
And sometime soon, I will be coming to Brazil. I've never been, and I want to. So it will happen. Well, thank you, Lucas. This has been so much fun talking with you. Really, really appreciate you being on here. It's been great.
My pleasure. Thank you very much, Josh. Thank you very much, Ashley.
Yes,
and
Ashley, we love you. I hope she sent me a picture of her with the baby, and the baby had fallen asleep. So, for everyone listening, yes, I want to say again, as we said at the beginning, every person we're having on these episodes about Side B in their context, this is their voice. We want to include more, Brazilian voices as we go forward. Who knows? Maybe one day we'll do an episode in Portuguese when my Portuguese gets good enough. Yeah, we are thankful for you, Lucas, and Steve, and everyone who's been coming on to help us get these kind of contexts. And for everyone, thank you for listening. If you want to support Life on Side B, please go to our Patreon page, patreon.com/lifeonsideb. You become a patron there. We have different tiers. Join our Discord community. Have a conversation with us there. Or give us a review on Apple Podcasts. We love it. We write a review and we'll read it off on online. So we would love that. Thank you everyone for listening, and we will talk to you next time. Bye everyone.
Bye bye. Thank you.